So the Sikha this week is about Sfiras Omer, which is in this week's parasha, so it works out nicely that we get to study something from the parasha that is directly related to what's going on in our own lives at the moment. And we're going to learn something very profound about counting Sfiras Omer, something that we might not have known under ordinary circumstances that is dealt with in this particular Sikha. Ala Posuk. The pasuk in this week's parasha says that you should count for yourself. Now here's a very key phrase of this whole sikha. Mimocharas HaShabbos, the day following Shabbos, Shabbos in inverted commas, you should count 7 complete weeks. Another important phrase over here, complete weeks. That's the instruction of counting the Omer. So commenting on that instruction, Isa b'Medrash, the Medrash Rabbi, it's actually in Koheles Rabbi, says as follows. Tani Rabbi Chia taught, Ksiv Sheva Shabbosos Temimos Tiyena, that the 7 weeks of counting the Omer should be complete weeks. That's the key. They should be complete weeks. Eimosai, when Hein Temimos, when are they complete weeks? Bizman She'ein Yeshua V'Shachneya Beinehem. Okay, ever heard of these things? So it's a very interesting suggestion that the Midrash is making over here. When will the 7 weeks be complete weeks? When they are not interrupted by this particular thing, Yeshua v'Shachnaya. Or Pirush Matnas Kahuna b'Shem Arakech. So one of the commentaries on the Midrash called the Matnas Kahuna explains that what this means is Rosh Chodesh Nisan b'Shabbos. Should Rosh Chodesh Nisan fall on a Shabbos, then Yavoi Pesach b'Shabbos, then you can assume that Pesach will also begin on a Shabbos. That's how it is. Whatever day of the week Rosh Chodesh is the same day that Pesach will be. So if Rosh Chodesh is on Shabbos, Pesach will also be on Shabbos. And then you will start to count the Omer on Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night. That will be the first night that you count the Omer. And when you have the opportunity to do that, then you get to complete 7 weeks. Each of the weeks will be Temimois complete. How will they be complete? Because there will be weeks as they would be in what we call Seder Bereshis. In other words, the week starts with a Sunday. The week starts after Shabbos. So here we're going to start the counting after Shabbos. And each week will complete on Shabbos, as the counting will complete on Shabbos. So, now these two things, Yeshua and Shechanya, they are just really arbitrary, and they're used as a siman, as a reminder. So you'll know how to work this out. Sometimes what we do in Torah is we don't necessarily always spell out all of the details, but occasionally we use what is called a siman. So something that you'll remember. Sometimes it's a mnemonic, sometimes it's a description, just to help you remember what's going on. What does it mean? So what does it mean? It means that there are 24 different groups, what we call mishmaros, different groups of Kohen families, who each had a turn to serve in the Beis HaMikdash for a week at a time. There's 24 divisions. 2 of those divisions are called Yeshua and Shachnaya. If Pesach starts on a Shabbos, then the way that the Seder, the arrangement of these different 24 Mishmaros works out, these 2 families do not get to serve in the Beis HaMikdash between Pesach and Shavuos. So in other words, what's it telling us? It's telling us that there's a certain advantage, because the Torah says that you should count 7 complete weeks. There's a certain advantage when those weeks are complete, not only that you count a full 7 weeks, i.e. 49 days, but there's another layer of completion when those weeks match with the Seder, with the order of the days of the week. So those weeks of counting start on Motzei Shabbos and end on Shabbos. And the Midrash wants us to know that the way to remember it is because of these 2 particular groups who lose the opportunity to serve in the Beis HaMikdash during that period. They'll still serve in the Beis HaMikdash, it just won't be during those weeks. Straight away, of course, that raises a very important question. It doesn't matter which authority you look at, it doesn't matter which opinion you look at, it doesn't matter which Gemara you look at, it doesn't matter which halachic authority you look at. Everybody agrees that when the Torah says Mimocharas HaShabbos, it does not mean straight after Shabbos, it means straight after Yom Tov. So Pesach has one day Yom Tov in Israel, it has one day Yom Tov at the beginning. As soon as that day of Yom Tov is finished, immediately the next mitzvah that you have, in other words, the following evening, is to count the Omer. Nobody believes, no Orthodox Jew believes that you have to wait until a Saturday night to start counting the Omer. Which means, even if Pesach should start on any day of the week, still, we will always start to count the Omer on the first night following the first night of Yom Tov of Pesach. We will not wait until Motzei Shabbos, because Motzei Shabbos is a divergent view called the Baitusim, or as we know them, the Tzedukim, people who broke away from mainstream Judaism and decided that they were only going to interpret the Torah based on how they appreciated scriptures, and they came up with this so-called literal translation that what it means is that it has to be on a Saturday night that you count the Omer. We reject that out of hand, and we believe that the correct way to count, and this is what we do in practice, is that you start the first night of Sfiras HaOmer immediately after Yom Tov, after the first night. In other words, second night Pesach is when you start, regardless of what day of the week it is. Sheva in other words, when the Torah now says that you should count 7 weeks, what does it mean? Not 7 weeks Sunday to Shabbos. It means 7 cycles of 7 24-hour periods. Or K'maimer Azal, Eimosai Atamoitza Sheva Shabbosos Temimois. So, like for example, the sages tell us very clearly at which point is it considered that the weeks are complete. Once you start counting in the evening, so that the 24-hour period is a complete 24 hours of counting. In other words, Temimos has nothing to do with whether the weeks run from Motzei Shabbos, from Sunday to Shabbos. In order for the 7 weeks of counting to be complete, what needs to happen is they need to be weeks where each day is complete. So you start counting the Omer as the day begins, which in halacha is in the evening. So therefore, we have a big question on this midrash. How can you Why now would the Medrash suggest that when are the 7 weeks of the Omer considered complete? When it's a Sunday to Shabbos cycle, which happens every few years. I mean, every few years you have that opportunity that Shabbos is the first day of Pesach, and then you count using this particular Seder. But it's uncommon. Why would the Midrash suggest that that is considered the so-called Tamimois, that is considered the so-called perfect count, when actually halacha is very clear that that's not the case? That a perfect count has to do with 7 24-hour periods making a week, and 7 of those weeks is what we consider Tamimois complete. Why is the Medrash digressing from that? That's question 1. Question 2, im kavanos shel hamedrash lahasber kifi anir kipshutoy shei atam moitze so in the tmimos ele boifin shmaschilin nisbam mitzoy Shabbos. If for whatever reason it is, the Medrash believes that it's only really a pure, complete, wholesome counting in those years when it happens that you start counting Sfira on a Saturday night, if the Medrash felt that that was important, well, then it could have just said it in a very simple, straightforward, easy language. It could have said this: Bizman shechol Pesach b'Shabbos v'chayotze b'zeh. Something along the lines of, if Pesach begins on a Shabbos, then we have 7 complete weeks. Why do you need to now bring an arbitrary, unrelated detail about two families of Kohanim who won't land up serving in the Beis Hamikdash between Pesach and Shavuos as your siman, as your reminder, as your indicator, as your sign. Why do we need that? Why are you complicating something simple? It's simple. If you believe, for whatever reason, we don't understand why you believe it, because halachically, it's considered 7 complete weeks, regardless of what day you start counting. But if you believe, for whatever reason, that it has to dafka be on a Saturday night in order to be complete, say so. Don't beat around the bush and start telling me a siman and a sign and something that most, let's be frank, who knew about these two mishmoris, about these two families of Kohanim before this? So, v'lama lashmein is alidei siman kozeh, bizman she'ein yeshua v'shachnayim b'neim, hamuvan rak לאחרי ידיע הסדר המשמורת, ושנזכרו על ידי שמואל ודוד כמה וכמה דורס לאחרי הסחולת כי מצווה ספירת האומר. You know, if you want to make things clear, which you assume that the Midrash does, because you assume that all Torah literature is there to make things clear and understandable, and thereby applicable. So if you want to make things clear, and for whatever reason you believe that you have to quote a siman, something that's going to help me to remember this thing, the siman should be something I know about already. Most people do not know the 24 different mishmoros, the names of the 24 different groups of Kohanim who worked in the Beis HaMikdash. We don't know them. Most people don't know them. How's that a siman? A siman would usually be, let's offer you something you're familiar with to help you remember something you're unfamiliar with. Here it looks like the Midrash is doing the opposite. Firstly, it looks like the Midrash contradicts halacha, that it is irrelevant when you start counting the Omer, it will be 7 complete weeks. That's halacha. And then the Midrash takes something simple. If Pesach falls on a Shabbos, X, Y, Z is the law, and overcomplicates it by saying, if you know about the Kohanim, etc., then you will know and appreciate how this all works. Seems very convoluted. שהפירוש שתי מעשה אינטימיים כשהם כמו ששת ימי בראשית אין כוונות להועיל את ספירת האומר כפשוטו. So straight away the Rebbe tells us you have to understand what's going on over here. Midrash does tend to tell us things which are not necessarily pshat. There is the simple, easy, accessible reading and understanding of a pasuk, of a concept in Torah, and then you have the deeper layers, and often the Midrash takes us to the deeper layers. The Midrash does not for 1 second suggest that in order to have the pshat, the simple understanding of 7 complete weeks of counting the Omer, you have to have Pesach start on a Shabbos. Because we know the halacha. And the halacha is that there are 7 complete weeks, whether it starts on a Saturday night, or if it starts on a Thursday night, like this year. So what is it that the Midrash wants us to know? Midrash is doing here what Midrash does. It's digging deeper. And here the Rebbe borrows an expression that the Sefer HaChinuch uses frequently. Sefer HaChinuch is a book that takes every single parasha of the year and says, what mitzvahs do we encounter for the first time in this parasha? And based on that, what are the basic parameters of the mitzvah? Who does it apply to? When does it apply? And then he uses the expression, umishoresh ha-mitzvah. What is the root? What is the meaning? What is the deeper perspective of this particular mitzvah? This is what the Midrash is doing now. So the Rebbe's already shifted us. We had serious questions on the Midrash because it felt like the Midrash ran against what halacha says, what you and I know to be true. You and I know that this year when we started counting the Sphira on a Thursday night, it is 100% going to be 7 complete weeks by the time we finish it. So why is the Midrash suggesting that it's only when you start counting on a Saturday night? Comes along the Rebbe and says, because it's Midrash. The Midrash is telling us another layer of understanding Sfiras HaOmer that you and I maybe hadn't thought about. So what's it telling us? The mitzvah Sfiras HaOmer shekasher Pesach u'b'Shabbos v'aminu shemei Sfiru k'fi seder d'sheish mei bereishis. The Midrash is telling us that on that occasion, those kinds of years, when Pesach begins on a Shabbos, and then we have the unique opportunity to start counting Sfiras HaOmer at the beginning of a new week. Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night, is the beginning of a new week. So when we have that unique opportunity, Hare Oz Hashem Shabbos is to Sfiras Omer and Temimos Gambi Pnimius Inyono. Then we have something about the counting of the Omer that we don't normally have. Not only is it 7 complete weeks in terms of counting, but there is a deeper layer and experience of 7 complete weeks that becomes available. Now, you're going to say, oh boy, so why are we learning that now? This year, we don't have this. This year, we did not start counting on a Motzei Shabbos. So are you telling me that this Sikha is going to leave us feeling that this year we're a little bit high and dry? We don't have the full impact of the sphere, because that's where it seems to be going. That there's a level of pnimius, that there's a deeper experience of the Omer that you get when it starts on a Motzei Shabbos. So don't panic, because that's not the purpose of the Sikha at all. It's just going to illustrate to us that some things are easier under some circumstances. But whatever Sfiras Omer has to offer us is completely available, regardless of what year it is and regardless of what day of the week we begin the counting. So what do we have? On those years, when the counting of the Omer begins on a Saturday night, on a Motzei Shabbos, there is an added dimension, there is a certain advantage that we don't normally have in ordinary years. Now, we'll start to examine in a moment, just a paragraph or so to go, and then we'll start to examine what that advantage is. And then you can start to wonder, well, do we have it this year? Because we did not start counting on a Saturday night. So do we have this particular advantage this year? And the Rebbe will put our mind at ease, kind of. Now, that answers one of our big questions. We wanted to know if the Midrash has something to say, if the Midrash believes that in order to have a complete week, you have to have started on Shabbos. Why didn't it just say that? Why did it give us this convoluted indication of the mishmaros, the different shifts of kohanim? Well, now we know why. The Midrash doesn't want to say specifically, outright, in clear language, that in order for Sfira to be complete, you have to start, in order for the 7 weeks to be complete, you have to start on a Motzei Shabbos, because that's factually untrue. Because that would give the impression that the whole principle of a complete Pesach, of a complete Omer, depends on a Pesach that starts on Shabbos, and that is untrue. So the Midrash doesn't want you to think that. If the Midrash had said, when are the 7 weeks complete? When Pesach falls on a Shabbos, you would walk out of there thinking, well, this year the counting is incomplete, because this year it did not start on a Motzei Shabbos. The Midrash can't say that because it's not true. That's why the Midrash addresses this issue in a roundabout fashion, using a siman, a hint, a metaphor, a sign, an indicator, because sometimes what you don't say actually tells us even more than what you're saying. The fact that the Midrash did not say, when is the Sfira perfect? When Pesach starts on Shabbos? It didn't say that, is because it didn't want to say that. It did not want to insinuate that under different circumstances, the Sfira Omer is incomplete. Shezeh mashatoyle inyan hatmimus ba'kfiyas de Pesach einoi b'chol hapratim. So the fact that the Pesach falling on Shabbos may impact Sfira, which it will, as we're going to see, is not relevant to every single detail of the counting of the Omer. And we'll explain in a moment what that means. Ki tmimus kipshutem iskayim b'chol hashonim, ela shekeshe'ein oremes Yeshua v'shachnaya b'neihem, shezeh keshechol b'Shabbos, mitosef oid inyan b'tmimus kanal. So what the Midrash is trying to tell us is that every single year, the counting of the Omer will be perfect. Every single year. And then those years, when we do get to start on a Motzei Shabbos, which is unique, and we now have this added opportunity alluded to by those two mishmaros, those two groups of kohanim not working during that period. So that's because there's an added dimension in that particular year, which is over and above the tmimus, the perfection of counting the Omer that you normally have. Now you should be scratching your head at this point. What do you mean? It's perfect, except that in some years it's more than perfect. Well, how do you get more than perfect? That seems to be self-contradictory. So we need to explain this, right? Because it's pretty odd. Before we can do so, though, we're going to look at a different comment in the Midrash, also in this week's parasha, and then we're going to compare the two Midrashim. And not just the two Midrashim, but also the nuance of how Chassidus approaches what this Midrash we're about to learn says. Based on that, we're going to raise an issue that is a slightly disturbing issue. Again, we'll look at how Chassidus explains it, which settles things, and that it's not so disturbing anymore. Armed with that information from this Midrash and from that apparently disturbing issue, we will then have a whole fresh perspective on what counting the Omer is actually all about. And we'll have a different perspective on why it should be different in a year when you start counting on a Motzei Shabbos or every other year. So there are a few steps that we have to get through in order to start to put this tapestry together. Let's move to the next step. We've dealt with one Midrash so far, the Midrash that raised the issues for us. How could you suggest that you need to start counting on a Saturday night in order to have perfection? Now we've said we're not saying that you have to have that for perfection, but it will add a new dimension. What are you talking about? It's perfect, but it could be better. Seems weird. Let's see what he says. In the Medrash Rabbi on our parasha also, the original Medrash was also related to a verse in our parasha. We find another aspect about what makes something tmimos, what makes these weeks perfect. And we're about to discover that it actually has nothing to do with the calendar, and it has everything to do with us, which is strange. Because the original Midrash that we quoted made it appear that it had everything to do with the calendar. And now we're implying that it has nothing to do with the calendar and everything to do with us. What does the Midrash say? Tani, Rabbi Chia. Oh, he might sound familiar, right? Because this is Rabbi Chia. We just read his opinion a moment ago. Rabbi Chia says, Sheva Shabbos Tumimos Tiyeno, Emosai Hein Tumimos. When are the 7 weeks of the Omer complete? Bizman sheYisrael oisin retzoinoi shel makoim. At a time when the Jewish people do Hashem's will. See? It's got nothing to do with the calendar. It has nothing to do with what day of the week you start counting. What makes the counting of the Omer complete? We do. If we do what Hashem wants, then our counting is complete. So now we've got two suggestions. The one suggestion in one Medrash is that in order for the counting of Omer to be complete, it actually has to do with when you start to count, Saturday night. The other Medrash is that in order for the counting to be complete, you have to do what Hashem wants. You've got to work on yourself. How do we reconcile the two? The Tzemach Tzedek says these two Midrashim and these two opinions are directly related. How so? V'hainu. שהמיילה דתמימוס הבא מצד עצמו בשונה שכל בפסח בשבס כשימי הספירים מתאימים לעשות ימי השבוע אפשר לבוא ולהגיע אליה גם בשונים שכל פסח באמצע השבס על ידי העבודה דאויסין רצונו של מקום. This is what we call the good news. What's the good news? If Pesach falls on a Shabbos, and then we get to start counting the Omer on Motzei Shabbos, which means that each week that we complete in the Omer counting is also an actual week that we complete, then the perfection, the completion of counting the Omer happens of its own accord. On a year such as this year, where we don't have that alignment, where we don't finish each week of the Omer as we finish a week, we can still achieve the same perfection and completion of counting of the Omer. It's just that now we have to work to achieve it. Those special years, it happens naturally. Ordinary years like this one, we have to invest effort in order to achieve that greatness, that perfection, that completion. How do we do that? What do we have to do? It's called Oisin Ritzoinoi Shel Mokim. That's the phrase that defines what we should be doing right now. A year like this, when the counting of the Omer did not start on a Motzei Shabbos. So we've got work to do. How do we define our work? It's called Oisin Ritzoinoi Shel Mokim. So the most logical thing then is we need a working definition of what does Oisin Ritzoinoi Shel Mokim mean. Because that's the key. You want to have the most complete and perfect version and experience of counting the Omer, which normally you have to have the gift of a Saturday night start in order to get it. You would like to have that this year? Great. Oisin Ritzoinoi Shel Mokim. Thank you very much. Please tell me what that means. Because if I don't know what it means, it's incredibly unfair for you to expect me to do something that I don't understand. So we're now going to embark on an exploration of what Oisin Ritzoinoi Shel Mokim means. And in order to do that, we have to touch on something which initially sounds very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. And the reason it's uncomfortable is because it's something we say every single day of our lives, more than once a day. We always think that we know what it means, and apparently we don't. So let's see. Isa Gemara. The Gemara says, see, it's familiar. It's the second paragraph of the Shema. It's something that we say every single day. That it says that you will be in this privileged position to be able to gather all of your crops and your grapes and your olives. Sounds beautiful, right? Sounds like a reward. Sounds like I've obviously done what Hashem wants, and now because I've done what Hashem wants, He's giving me these brachas. Hu bizman she'ein Yisrael oisin ritzoinoi shel mokim. Says the Gemara, that phrase refers to when the Jewish people are not doing Hashem's will. At this point in time, your brain should be screaming. At this point in time, everything that you always understood about the second paragraph of the Shema is thrown into question. Because the second paragraph starts, V'haya im shamayat tishmu. Listen to Hashem, and then all these wonderful things are going to happen to you. So it sounds like if I'm getting the good things, it must imply that I'm listening. And now the Gemara says, well, those brachas come to you when you're not doing what Hashem wants? How do you work this out? V'lecha tamua. This is incredibly surprising. These words, that you will gather your crops and your grapes and your olives, is a direct continuation of the promise that was started just before. When you will listen to my mitzvahs, and you will serve Hashem with all your heart and all your soul. What's going to happen to you because of that? You're going to get all these brachas. How could you possibly in the Gemara now suggest that this pasuk, this verse, with all these brachas, is actually talking about when you're not doing Hashem's will? This is bizarre. The whole purpose of this paragraph was to say, if you do Hashem's will, you get the brachas. Now we reach the point where you get the brachas. The Gemara says that's when you're not doing His will. It makes no sense. So the Alter Rebbe resolves this issue in the Likutei Torah, his in-depth analysis of the parashas of the week, where he says, the parasha Zoy Ashniya lo niska b'chol ma'oidechem, k'mo shekasav b'parasha Shema, v'lochein nikra adayin ein oisin ritzoinoi shel mokim chulei. He says it's simple. Look at the first paragraph of the Shema. It said there, "V'ahavtas Hashem elekecha," you will love Hashem b'chol levavcha, with all your heart, v'chol nafshecha, and all your soul, v'chol moedecha, and all your extreme investment. Ma'oid, superlative investment. Ma'oid means more. Whatever you've done, you're going to do more. You're going to overextend yourself. That's only in the first paragraph of the Shema. In the second paragraph, it does not include b'chol ma'odechem. It's all in the plural in the second paragraph. It doesn't say anything about serving Hashem in this extreme fashion. Therefore, even though you've done enough to deserve reward, you have. How do we know that? Because look, you're getting reward. In spite of the fact that you've achieved enough to deserve reward, you have not achieved the level of oisin ritzoinoi shel mokim, to do Hashem's will. That could make you feel incredibly uneasy. What are you saying? Are you saying that I do everything right? I do everything right to the point that I deserve to be rewarded for it, and that's not good enough? Are Hashem's expectations so radical that nobody could ever reach them? What more do you want from me? I'm doing what you said. I'm following your instructions. And I know that I'm doing it right because you are rewarding me and you promised me a reward when I do it. So how can you say this is now not oisin ritzoinoi shel mokim? Must be that we don't really understand what oisin ritzoinoi shel mokim means. It's easy to translate it and to say it as simply doing what Hashem wants, but it clearly must be more than that. So what is it? Once we understand that, we'll be able to plug that interpretation, that definition, back into the story of counting the Omer. When we plug it back into counting the Omer, we'll be able to appreciate what we should be doing this year, Tov Shin Pei 5780, to catch up with the magnificent opportunity that we would have had on a year that Sfiras Omer started on a Motzei Shabbos. So to understand this concept, why doing Hashem's will requires that you love Him to the extent of b'chol moedecha, in order to understand that, we need to define the word makoim. Why do we say oisin ritzoinoi shel makoim? Why don't we say oisin ritzoinoi shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, oisin ritzoinoi shel Hashem? There are multiple ways that we could refer to Hashem. Why are we dafka referring to Him here as makom, which is always a strange reference? It's in multiple places in Torah. Makom means place. Why do we call Hashem place? Yadua hatam shakadosh baruch hu nikra makom, ki hu makoimoi shel olam. So the reason that Hashem is sometimes referred to as makom, as so-called place, is because Hashem is the place of the world, and the full quotation is ve'ein ha'olam mekoimoi. That means the world cannot contain Hashem, but Hashem contains the world. And that's usually how it is explained. So we have this idea of perspective that the world can't chap Hashem, they can't grasp Hashem. Nothing within creation is vast enough, developed enough, infinite enough to be able to chap Hashem, to grasp Hashem. But obviously Hashem contains everything within Himself. Chassidus adds a very important nuance to this, namely, v'hainu shem makom hu b'china sheshayeches la'olamois oir hamemale kol olmin. When we refer to Hashem as makom, we are being quite specific, that we're referring to that dimension of Hashem that can relate to the physical reality, to the created reality, to a reality that is defined by makom, that is defined by space. What level of godliness relates to space, relates to creation? It's called memale kol olmin, the dimension of godliness that enters and fills the world in a healthy, calibrated fashion, so that every single entity and every single creature receives exactly the right amount and style of divine energy to allow it to be what it is, and to succeed and to live, and not to be swallowed up in some greater reality. When we call Hashem makom, we are referring to Memale Kol Almin, how Hashem allows His energy to enter into the finite reality called makom. Aval Ritzoinoi Shel Makom, Koi Al Oren Seif HaSevev Kol Almin Shel Amayim Megeder Makom Shel Ha'olamos. But then there is Sovev, that which is beyond the creation, that which can't be held by, or understood by, or defined by, or identified by the creation. That is called Ritzoinoi Shel Makom. What is Ratzon? Ratzon is will. That's how we usually translate, right? We usually translate Ratzon as will. Sometimes an easier way to understand it is motivation. The motivation for Makom. What pushed Hashem to make a world? Well, in order to motivate for something, you're obviously beyond it. You're obviously greater than it. So say, for example, that, I don't know, you decide that you want to run a race. You decide that you want to paint an artwork. You decide that you want to travel the world. You decide you want to launch a new business. So all of those things are the makoim. They have their parameters. What's the painting going to look like? How long a race are you going to run? Where in the world do you want to travel over what period of time, and how will you afford it? What's your business idea? Who you're going to go to invest? How will you market it? That's all makoim. You, the innovator, the one who motivates, who pushes for that particular thing to happen, you're obviously more powerful. And not just more powerful, you're greater than it. So when you finish that art project, nobody looks at the art project and says, wow, that captures you. No, it doesn't. It captures something that I did over a finite period of time. When a person sees your magnificent business success, which might be even more widespread than a particular artwork, they're not going to be able to look at that business and say, now I know everything about you. No, you don't. You know about how I deal with business. You know how I market. You know how I deal with people. You don't know me. You don't know what's going on in my life. So Makoim references how Hashem allows his energy to seep into the world and fill it to a point of healthy continuum. And Retzoinoi Shel Makoim, that refers to the dimension of Hashem that is beyond the world and causes that process of creation to happen. So Makom is what we call Memale Kol Almin, a dimension of godliness that is relative to and pretty much defined by creation. And Retzoino Shel Makom refers to Sovev Kol Almin, a dimension that is beyond any definition, certainly not a definition that you and I can relate to. So now we need to do Oisin Retzoino Shel Makom. We are asked and instructed to make, we originally translated as Oisin Retzoino Shel Makom, you should do Hashem's will. But with this definition, we understand that we should make the Retzoino Shel Makom. What does that mean? Well, before we get into the detail of exactly how it is, let's first talk about what technology we're supposed to use. You want to touch Retzoino Shel Makom. Whatever you're going to do with it, we'll talk in a moment what you're going to do with it. But you want to reach outside of our reality. You want to reach beyond Memale Kol Almin. You want to stretch yourself to a dimension of godliness that is completely infinite. Well, then you better start doing something which is beyond. B'chol mo'idecha. Because whatever you intend to bring from Hashem towards yourself and into the world can only be stimulated by an action, attitude, or an approach which is similar to what you want to achieve. So if you want something to happen in your life that is completely natural and normal, then serve Hashem in a way that is completely natural and normal. But if what you want to come into your life is something which is completely supernatural, radically supernatural, well, then you've also got to become radically beyond yourself. B'chol mo'idecha. ולכן המשך רצונו של מקום הבלי גבול שנמיילה בו דווקא על ידי העבודה בכל מאידך בלי גבול שבאדם. So Retzoino Shel Makom, we have already identified. Retzoino Shel Makom is this higher dimension, this Or Ein Sof, the Sovev Kol Almin, which is an infinite dimension of godliness completely beyond anything that the world has to offer, whether that be your personal world, your mind, the physical world that we live in, the greater universe, the spiritual realms, the highest realms, the biggest angels. It's beyond all of that. So the only way to touch infinite is to be infinite. The only way to be infinite is to be what we call Bli Gvul, not bound by your own personal constraints. So Oisin Retzoino Shel Makom is not about ticking boxes and making sure, listen, this is what Hashem wants of me and I've done it. Look at me, I'm a perfect Jew. I did exactly what he wanted. How good am I? I've even been rewarded. That tells you that I'm doing the right thing. Sorry, all of that could happen in the realm of Gevul. You might just happen to be a very religiously oriented person. You might happen to be somebody who loves learning. You might be incredibly self-disciplined by nature. We don't know that you are stretching yourself just because you're doing good things, just because you're fulfilling mitzvahs. So if a person wants to reach Retzoino Shel Makom, then that person is going to have to push themselves outside of everything that they know about themselves. That's called B'chol Mo'idecha. Now you may have a question, Let's be honest. You just said that it's Ritzoinoi Shel Mokoim. You've just told me that this incredibly elevated, powerful level of godliness is Shel Mokoim, motivates the process of creation. So that means that it is somehow connected to the world, and it's constantly allowing the world to come into existence and to be created. That's why the name of Hashem that relates to that level is Yud Kei Vav Kei, which we call amongst Hasidim, we call it Havaya, bringing into existence. So why do I have to stretch myself to such a radical extreme in order to access a level of godliness that seems to already have some relationship with this world? So he answers that. Because yes, it's true that incredibly great level called Sovev Kol Olmin is the motivation to make the world exist. I don't experience that. When I look around the world, what do I see? I see nature. And if I stretch myself even more than that, I'm able to see, you know what, there's something beyond nature. There's a spiritual realm too. And I can meditate and learn about the angels, and I can read about them in davening, and the seraphim who are saying, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. They have this rapture of godliness. I can read about all of that stuff. But I don't see, and I won't see Sovev Kol Almin Ritzoinoi Shel Mokoim, the dimension of Hashem that motivates all of that to happen. I don't see motivation, I see action. If somebody looks at my painting, they see my painting, they see the style that I chose to use, the particular surface that I chose to paint it on, the color schemes that I chose, the thing I wanted to depict. You don't see my Ratzon, you don't know what prompted me to decide to paint that particular thing, or start that business, or run that marathon. You only see what's revealed, what plays out in your environment. So if you want to be able to connect with Ratzon, the motivator of creation, the Ein Sof, the only way you can reveal that which is infinite into this world is by doing something that for you is infinite. And let's not make a mistake over here and think that what for you is infinite means that you completely turn your whole life upside down and you go meshuggah, and overnight you go from one extreme to the other. Bli gvul, whatever currently is my constraint, if I break out of that, that is a moment of b'chol mo'idecha. So if there's a person who says, listen, I'm willing to try a whole lot of things, but that I cannot do. That particular mitzvah, I'm not ready for it yet. That level of commitment, I'm not there yet. That restraint, you honestly think that I'm going to get to a point, I'm never going to speak badly about other people, not me. You honestly think I'm going to learn Torah every single day? No. Any one of those constraints, those gvulim, when a person becomes so motivated and passionate for Hashem, that you have a love, bechol moedecha, that takes you outside of those predetermined, self-imposed constraints, maybe not always self-imposed, maybe sometimes habituated, maybe sometimes because of the belief systems that we have. If I can push myself beyond that, then I can touch Ein Sof. That's the incredible gift that Hashem gives us. He offers us the opportunity to get in touch with His infinite being by pushing ourselves to be what for us seemed infinitely impossible to do. V'zeu hadiuk oisen ritzoinoi shel makoim. Now it gets really profound. The expression is not oisin retzoinoi de makoim she, I don't know, so whatever other expression you might have wanted to use. But here we're looking at it slightly nuanced. Oisin retzoinoi, you're supposed to take Hashem's rotzen, motivation, Ein Sof, infinite, Sovev Kol Almin, superpower energy, shel makoim, and let the makoim, the finite reality, own it. Which means that the goal is the goal is to make Hashem revealed here. Not that I should float away and do a Nadav and Avihu trick where I get enraptured in godliness to the point that my soul flies out of my body. That's not the goal at all. The goal is to be able to reveal in our here and now, with all of its limitations, a palpable awareness of Ein Sof. Not just that Hashem is in charge, and Hashem is the creator, and there's divine providence, so everything happens for a reason, and all of those beautiful things that we talk about, which are all true. We're supposed to go even beyond that. In my here and now, I see that Hashem is Ein Sof. In my here and now, where I live in a world that seems to be paralyzed right now by a disease that nobody seems to know how to cure. And in their quest to cure it, they've paralyzed us financially. So maybe there'll be more fallout, and we can debate this, right? Economically, and the whatever residual impact there'll be from that, collateral damage. We don't know we feel completely powerless. Oisin ritzoinoi shel makom. You bring an awareness of Ein Sof, that none of that is relevant because Hashem is large and in charge, because Hashem is not bound by any of the rules, because He is Ritzoinoi Shel Mokim. How do I know that? Because I've done it in my own life. Look at this. I had rules in my own life that I really believed in. I had limitations that I honestly thought were real, and I broke those barriers. See, Ein Sof is real. The capacity to break out of the perceptions of what life is dictated by is real, and through that I recognize and bring Hashem into this world. In fact, I can bring Hashem into this world to such an extent, like in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Yisayim izoi, mekoim aran einoi min hamida, mekoim ulamayla me'amokim beyachad nimna hanimnois. I can reach the most incredible state where something that occupies space, the aron, the ark in the Holy of Holies, at the same time that it's a measurable, finite entity that actually occupies space and has mass, simultaneously occupies no space. So if I measure the room size from wall to wall is the same as the sum of from the one edge of the aron to the wall and the other edge of the aron to the wall. And I'm scratching my head because it makes absolutely no sense. Make up your mind. Either this is a reality that occupies space, or it's a hologram and there's no such concept as space. And here I am looking at something that is physical, tangible, has a mass, has a size, and does not occupy space at all. Ein Sof in this world. That's the goal of being Jewish, actually. The goal of being Jewish is not to be religious. The goal of being Jewish is not to be able to turn around and say, do you know how many mitzvahs I did today? So many mitzvahs that Hashem's even going to bless my crops. That's not the goal. It might be a phase. It might be part of the development of being Jewish. The goal of Jewish is that I live in this incredible paradox. I'm a human invested in this world. I hold down a job. I speak to normal human beings in a language that they understand. I eat food. And all of that is completely infused with this incredible sense of Ein Sof. Ritzoinoi shel mokim. Hashem's infinite being lives inside the ordinary things that I do. He doesn't say it in this Sikha, but in the Sikhas of Tov Shin Aleph, and Tov Shin Beis, the last group of sikhs that the Rebbe has told us to date, the Rebbe puts us in the words of Mashiach. This is Mashiach. To have that which is completely otherworldly, being absolutely comfortable and part of and defines the reality of the world that I live in, starting with myself. That the deepest part of my neshama, the yechida of my neshama, becomes what I tangibly feel in my ordinary day-to-day life. I don't look strange to other people, but I definitely look very deep. And I see the world and I experience the world in a different way. Now that we understand this concept of Ritzono Shel Makom, which is really powerful, what is its specific relationship to counting the Omer? Because that's what the Midrash says. The Midrash says if you want to feel the perfection of counting the Omer, you need to do Oisin Ritzono Shel Makom. What's the connection? The Omer was an offering that was brought at the beginning of this whole process, obviously in the Beis Hamikdash times, and it was brought from barley, which was incredibly rare. Almost every single offering of flour ever in the Beis Hamikdash had to be made of wheat, and this one was dafka made of barley, which in halacha is considered animal fodder, not suitable for humans. So that animal fodder speaks directly to myself, because inside me there's an animal soul, and to be honest, the animal soul is usually the louder voice. And a lot of what goes on in my life is dictated to by that animal soul and its impulses and its wishes and its needs and its restrictions and weaknesses. Sphira comes from the word saphir, which means to shine. The purpose of Sfiras HaOmer is to elevate the animal and make it shine. My personal makom, my personal set of parameters and boundaries and restrictions. This is the time of the year when I get the chance to make that part of myself that is usually so grounded, so limited, so finite, so impulsive, so weak, I make it shine. How do I get to do that? In order to have the capacity to impact my own self, my own internal animal in such a profound way, in order to do that, I have to reach outside of the system. Because in the system, whether that means the system of nature, or here, say the Hishtalshalus, the system of the whole spiritual hierarchy, there's no room in an animal for bright, shining radiance. Doesn't make sense. There's no room in a nefesh habahamis for connection to God. It doesn't make sense. I should shed my animal to be able to connect. Okay, mevor b'chassidus b'firish ha'kosav usfatim lechem mimochas ha'shabbos. Sha'koyach al avodah shel b'nei nefesh habahamis usfatim lechem hi mimochas ha'shabbos b'bichinas ha'yonsef shel mani ma'atzilus she'na le'yosef gam b'bichinas Shabbos. Chassidus explains that that's why the Torah tells you, when do you start counting the Omer? Mimocharas ha'Shabbos, the day after Shabbos. Yes, halachically we know that word Shabbos does not mean Shabbos. It actually means Yom Tov. But Mimocharas ha'Shabbos, we all know that Shabbos is a very lofty spiritual level. Technically, you can say that Shabbos relates to what we call Atzilus, the highest of all of the nameable levels within the Hishtalshalus structure. The day after means the day beyond. Mimochras HaShabbos, in order to have the power to be able to go through this process and to be able to work with our animal soul and to be able to elevate it, where do we get that power from? It sounds like an impossible task. Seriously, you know what you're talking about? Do you understand how big my animal is? Do you understand how strong my animal is? Do you honestly think that I could overcome it? Yes. Why? Because before you start, we plug you in to a level called Mochras HaShabbos, a level that is beyond even the incredible spiritual awareness or opportunity of a Shabbos. We plug you in to a jetpack of spirituality that is outside of and beyond and greater than the system of Hishtalshalus, and it's greater therefore than the limitations of Hishtalshalus. And this is the now we get it. This is what the counting of the Omer is actually about. It's about oisin ritzoinoi shel mokai. It's about reaching up beyond not only what you and I can understand, beyond what is understandable, beyond what can be attained in any level here, Gan Eden, Atzilus, whatever fancy word you want to use, beyond all of that, to tap into that energy and use it in a way that becomes real, attainable, tangible here on earth in my experience. That's the goal of counting the Omer. That I can touch beyond in a way that my animal is elevated. Now we can understand the original Midrash, where the original Midrash said that if the Sphira happens to align with the way that a week is constructed, so the counting starts at the beginning of a week and rounds off each segment at the end of a week, now we chapwa, that's a big deal. And this is the part that speaks to the blur of living in days that just seem to run into each other. Generally, we divide time into three categories. Weekdays, days of the month, days of the year. But there is a difference between how the cycle works on a weekly basis compared to how the cycle works on either a monthly or an annual basis. So the month and year are more similar, and the outlier is the weeks. First of all, the distinction between one day of the month and the next, or one day of the year and the next, is clear. It's obvious, you don't have to explain it. For example, If I look at the days of the month, I can distinguish each day of the month from the next day by what the moon looks like on that particular day. Beginning of the month, small moon, then it grows. Middle of the month, full moon, and then it wanes. End of the month, no moon. So the night sky already gives me a very tangible distinction between one day of the month and the next. B'mei Hashana. Besides the fact that the same thing would obviously apply in the year. Besides the fact that the days of the year can also be split into seasons, the various seasons, whether they be the climatic seasons or whether they be the agricultural seasons. What distinguishes days of the year, if you're into astronomy, you'll understand this. Every single day of the year, there's a slightly different configuration of the entire astronomical system. That's what distinguishes one day from the next. Whereas if you look at the days of the week, there's nothing tangible that distinguishes one day from the other. Yes, I know. Monday morning, Monday blues. Sunday, a more calm day. That's true. That's because of the way that we've constructed society. But there's nothing within astronomy that distinguishes fundamentally between one day and the next. That's the first thing. Second thing, second of all, in all of our calculations as Jewish people, in our calendars, we count months. First month, second month, etc. We count years. Year 5780. We don't count that. We don't count weeks. Even though in the secular calendar we speak about whatever week it is of the year, especially if you want to get timeshare at the end of the year. So you got to know which week it is to know how much it's going to cost you. But in Torah literature, there is no concept of counting weeks. In other words, the passage of time as marked by months and years is distinct on a day-by-day basis. The passage of time marked by weeks is indistinct. Why? V'habir, nothing happens by chance. V'habir, kol shana shoynehim mishar shana b'achayis animshach v'emesif aleim. What distinguishes one year from the next is that there's a brand new energy pack that Hashem launches every Rosh Hashanah that will be the unique energy pack of that particular year that will unfold over the course of the 300 and however many days it might be on that particular year. Each day will seep out a little bit more of that energy into the world, an energy that's never been here before. Every Rosh Hashanah there's a new energy that's never been here before. We have a very similar thing that happens to us every single month. Within the same year, there's a distinction from month to month because B'chol Rosh Chodesh Nimshech Chayus Chodesh. Every Rosh Chodesh is a miniature version, new energy that comes into the world that is relevant for this particular month. Mashenki b'negel Shavua. Ein Chelek ben Achayis Shavua l'Shavua. There's no fundamental difference between the energy of this week and next week. There is a specific difference if it's a week of Iyar or a week of Sivan. That will make a difference. But Shebechol Shavua v'Shavua Nemonim Tamid Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, or Shlishi v'Chulei Av Shem Ibriya Soilem Ad Ata Kvar Yesh Alofim U'Revav V'Yomim Kem Osim Mimei HaHekav Shechayzin Chalila. Unlike years where we never go back, now we're in 5780, we don't go back. Unlike months where you don't go back some point in the middle of the year and say, oops, this is actually the same month repeating itself. We don't do that. Even the second Adar, we call it the 13th month. It has its own identity. But when it comes to the days of the week, every single day of our lives, we get up to Hayoim, Yoim, Rishon, B'Shabbos. Today is the first day of Shabbos. It's not really. Shabbos for the first time happened 5,780 years ago. No problem. It's the first day because it's just a set of days that keep repeating in a loop, as some people will call it Groundhog Day, or as some people will tell you that's exactly what they feel right now in their homes. These days are all the same. You'll see another way that this plays out is in how you count. When you count months, the days of the month could be a full month, 30 days, or an incomplete month, 29 days. When it comes to counting years, the days of a year, a lot of different possibilities. Does Cheshvan have 30 days or 29 days? Does Kislev have 13 days or 29 days? Is it a leap year? Is it an ordinary year? There are various permutations of how many days there might be in a year, and it changes from year to year. It doesn't matter where you are on the continuum, a week is always 7 days, and it's never going to change. Even though maybe for productivity people have considered other options, we're still with the 7-day week. Why is this relevant? You know why it's relevant? Because that will help us to understand how come it is that if you start the counting of the Omer on a Saturday night, there is a natural completion to the process that under different circumstances like this year would have to work really hard to achieve. Why is that? Why? Because we've already described that the concept of Oisin Ritzono Shel Mokum is an exercise that takes a tremendous amount of effort on our part to be able to bring godliness as it is completely beyond Hishtalshlus, beyond everything that exists in spiritual hierarchy, and draw that down into our very finite reality, even in fact in my own animal soul. When the counting of the Omer aligns with how the days of the week run, then that bridge is already in place before I do anything. Because what do I have when I'm counting the Omer in it and it follows the order of the week? Well, I've got a week. And the week, as we've already defined, is an incredibly finite reality, so much so that it never changes. It's just the recycling of the same 7 days again and again. As people will tell you, same day, different week. And now I plug into that the counting of the Omer. I plug into that something which is completely transcendent. Where the therefore, when the counting of the Omer runs along the same order as the days of the week, you know what's happening over here? I've got this repeating set of weeks. Something that repeats and repeats and repeats and it never changes. Doesn't that sound a little bit like infinite? Never changes. Doesn't fluctuate. It's not subject to external pressures or influences. It has a consistency and it keeps repeating in spite of what's going on. I've got that already on board. Now I've just got to start counting my Omer. And then I can fuse the two together. Bring in that incredible power of the repetitive / infinite power into the avoida, the work that I'm doing counting the Omer. So what do we have so far? We understand that the concept of counting the Omer is an opportunity in life to practice b'chol ma'odecha, to race way beyond anything that we expect to be capable of, and to then bring it back into day-to-day reality. Certain years are special because we're given that on a platter. We're given that consistency even before we start. Now we can understand why the Midrash, instead of just telling us straight that if it happens to be that Pesach falls on a Shabbos, you'll have that magnificent opportunity, insists on invoking these two groups of Kohanim, people we've never heard of before. You know why? Because their names are relevant. And they tell the story. These two names, and particularly when they sit next to each other, tell exactly the story of bringing Ein Sof, the infinite power of godliness, into daily activity. How so? Yeshua milashon Yoshiacha, Shachnai v'Shachanti. So the one word Yeshua is related to Hashem saving us, and the other word, Shachnaya, is related to V'Shachanti, which we'll see in a minute, obviously relates to the Shechina. V'Loshen HaChasidus, V'Negea L'Gil Elikus. Yeshua Miloshen V'Yisha Hashem El Hevel V'Minchosev V'Hu Yerida Sa'or V'Hashefet D'Shin Ayin Nehurin Sheb'Zer HaKadosh. We know right in the beginning of time, there were the two brothers, Cain and Hevel. They each brought an offering. Cain's offering was rejected. Vayisha Hashem el Hevel ve'el minchasoi. Hashem turned, he directed all of his flow of energy towards Hevel, Abel, and his offering. And we say that word Vayisha relates to 370 different lights that are described in the Zohar that come flowing down into this world through that process called Vayisha. והוא מה שנמשך מבחינת סרן ספר מצל לעליון ברוך הוא שלמעלה מבחינת האור וההשפעה שבתחילת האצילוס והשתלשלוס והיינו שישוע מלשון ישוע מוירה על בחינת האור שלמעלה מהשתלשלוס, which means that this word Yeshua, that refers to a stream of godly energy that is completely beyond the system, that is Ein Sof, that is infinite, that is not bound by Hishtalshlus, becoming available, turning, being redirected, flowing into the system. V'shachnaya she'ikaruhu shachen hu k'moi shechina, she'moira b'chinas elikusha shechenas mislabeshes toikolom b'chinas memale kolomin. Whereas the second name, Shachnaya, which comes from the word shachen, which is a neighbor or means to dwell, relates to the Shechina, the dimension of godliness that is at home in our world, that dwells in our world, that belongs in our world. ונמצא שצירוף ישוע ושכניה היינו ייחוד בבחינת האור של המים משתלשלות ישוע ואור הממלא שכניה הוא דוגמת המשכת רצון יסברך בבחינת מוקרים. By specifically referring to these two groups of kohanim, the Midrash alludes to exactly the point of the counting of the Omer. Take that which is totally transcendent, Yeshua, and bring it down into that which is completely available, Shachnaya. Reach into a realm that is beyond anything we could imagine and draw from that into our familiar environment so as to change our environment and elevate our environment and revolutionize our environment, and that is the purpose of counting the Omer. כי כוונס המדרש תאמוסה אין תמימוסי שבקביעס כזוי שדשב ושבוסס אין תמימוס מצד עצמם גם כאשר לא ישנה עבודה דייסן אצל שמוק המרמז בישוע ושכניה. That's what the Midrash wants us to understand. Yeshua v'Shachnaya, these two groups of Kohanim who represent the very elevated godliness and the very accessible godliness, they actually represent us putting in the effort of our own accord. When the counting of the Omer begins on a Motzei Shabbos, and we now have this special push from Hashem to allow us the opportunity to gain that incredible experience without having to work as hard as it, these two people don't serve in the Beis HaMikdash because they don't have to serve. They don't have to serve because we don't have to put in that same degree of effort because Hashem is, so to speak, doing the work for us. ולכן אומר, אמוסה אין תמימוס בזמן שאין ישוע ושכניה ביניהם שבכפיס כזוי שלא ישנה במשמורת ישוע ושכניה גם כאשר לא ישנה עבודה מרוממת בישוע ושכניה השב ושבוסת שספיר סוימה עם תמימוס מצד עצמם. That's actually the message. The Midrash wants us to know that under ordinary circumstances, these two groups of Kohanim represent what we should be doing all the time, but specifically during the counting of the Omer. To reach Yeshua, to reach this incredible dimension of godliness that has to be, so to speak, redirected into our space, and Shachnaya for us to get it to settle and become real and tangible and actually how we live our lives. That's usually what we have to work on, and occasionally we're given a gift, and Hashem allows it to happen, so to speak, spontaneously. And then those two don't appear during this period. So I think the take-home message for us is, look, there are certain times where Hashem gives us things in an easier fashion. This year happens not to be one of those times. There's two things to take out from that. First of all, just because Hashem hasn't made it easy for us does not mean it's inaccessible to us. On the contrary, it means He trusts that we can do it. That we can, within our own avodah, bring that incredible dimension of godliness into our lives. And number two, it's telling us that there's a certain richness when we do it. Of course, Hashem can give us things on a platter. He can at any given time, and He could have right from the beginning where He put Adam and Chava into Gan Eden. But that's not the intention. The intention is dafka this kind of a year, where we have to step out of ourselves and challenge ourselves and do things which we believe to be bli gvul. Oh my goodness, this is way beyond anything I imagined I could ever achieve. And that's when the real magic happens, when we push ourselves. And we then have that magnificent sense of achievement because we've succeeded in bringing godliness into our lives and into the world, rather than to wait for Hashem to do it for us.